Hi there, I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com, and this is my Smart American Accent training. Welcome back to our Friday question and answer class, where we come to you live each week to answer your questions regarding American English pronunciation, American accent, intonation, and everything you need to improve your personal and professional communication in American English. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about giving information over the phone, or spelling your name, spelling your email address, spelling your street address, being clear when you're having to spell letters in American English. Nice to see you. Hi. I want to give you some tips for doing this, both in terms of your accent, what errors you might be making when you're saying those letter names that might confuse people when they're trying to write down your email or trying to learn how to spell your name. And also with when you give information over the phone, what is the clearest way to be sharing that information? So some of these tips would be useful for native speakers as well. Information over the phone can be hard to hear and distinguish between certain letters, so we'll talk about that. As well as you have different letter names, of course, in your native language for the letters. And even though you've been speaking English for a long time, you have very good skills, sometimes it's still tricky when you have to spell something to remember in particular what the vowels are called, since our letters don't really match our sounds very well, and also to be clear when you're spelling. So I'll be talking about that for our main topic. Also, I'll take your questions. So if you have a question on this topic or something else related to American English pronunciation, feel free to ask that at any time. If you're watching the replay, you can ask questions in the comments or on the comments for any of my videos. I always go back and check those and get back to you with resources and answers to your questions. I also want to make an announcement for those of you who are here in the Seattle and Bellevue area that I'll be teaching a free class next week on Wednesday morning at Crossroads Community Center. And I'm excited to teach this class. I'm joining the ELA, which is English Language Learners Alliance. And they have an intermediate to advanced ESL class every Wednesday morning at 10. And it's a great class talking about everyday English. And they go through various topics to help you improve your speaking and listening skills for day-to-day tasks. And as a guest teacher, I'm going to be talking about fluency and linking, how we connect words and reduce sounds, one of the topics we talk about often here in this class as well, and that you can find more information on my fluency linking and reduce sounds playlist, as well as on speechmodification.com. So you can check that out if you're here in this area. I hope you'll join. It's a free class, and it meets every week, and I'll be there this coming week. Here's a link to where you can find more information about that on my website. And for those of you who aren't here in this area, I will be talking about similar topics and creating a few new videos for the class, which will be released later next week for those of you who are watching from further away and can't make it. So let's talk about spelling. And it may seem sort of basic to be talking about the alphabet. And for many of you, you have this mastered already, and you have no trouble remembering the American English alphabet names. But I do want to point out that it can be useful to practice using the alphabet and spelling certain things that you have to do frequently. And you naturally get practice when you're having to give this information over the phone, or when you meet someone new and you're giving them your email address, or if someone's asking you how to spell your name or what your name is and you have to give the letters for that. But you may not have thought about accent error patterns you have for those sounds. So just to review, the accent error patterns that you have in your speech tend to result from the sound system in your native language. And for those of you who are new to my channel or new to speech modification, we do a lot with focusing on which accent patterns you have and why. And so I'm going to just show you a great resource on speechmodification.com, which is that you can download an overview of accent for your native language. Now, it's not going to be an exact match to your speech, but when you go to my website, speechmodification.com, and you go to the store page, you can see that I have many free downloads, and you can look for your native language here in the free downloads. And you can find on those downloads, if you're an Arabic speaker or a French speaker, Spanish speaker, many, many languages, you can see which patterns you tend to have. So what are the errors you need to watch out for when you're speaking in general, and then now specifically for these, for when you're spelling and giving the alphabet. So we'll talk about those as we go. We have a question about the pronunciation of the word disorder. Does the letter S in this word have an S or Z sound? Disorder. It's an S sound in that case because the prefix dis, has the S sound, disorder. If it were a Z sound, it would sound more like disorder. So of course, S in the middle of words can be an S or a Z, but in disorder, it's an S. Good question. Okay, so when we're, for example, when you're trying to prepare to have to give information over the phone, you might want to think about the letter names that you're going to have to say and actually spell out the letters you're going to be saying with the letter names. So when for example, if I live on Sylvan Street, when I see that or think that, I might have a tendency to make some accent error patterns on those words. And so I can write it out. The letter S says S, obviously. The letter Y, I can write it like this, Y, and then I won't have an error on it. L, the letter V, A, I'm going to write A like that, and I'm going to write N like that. So we don't often think about the fact that when I say S, it actually has two sounds, and S. Or when I say Y, it has a W, I, it has three sounds, etc. And so I can, once I've written it out, I can see maybe where some of my error patterns might be. So for example, if I have an accent error pattern on the V, like Indian English speakers, Spanish speakers, Turkish speakers, Russian speakers, many people have patterns on V. For example, they might have difficulty between the letters V and W, V and W, between those sounds. And so I might accidentally, when I'm trying to spell Sylvan, I might actually accidentally say this V as a W or as we. And if I am spelling S-Y-L, we-A-N, people won't know what I'm saying. They won't know that I mean V and that I just have an accent error on the V and W sounds. So when I write it out, I can anticipate, look and see, okay, yes, I have a tendency to, for example, use an ng sound instead of an N sound. Then people might have trouble when I'm saying the letter N. They might hear me say ng. Or if for N, if I have problems with this vowel sound and I'm saying it more like in with a I vowel or ain with an A vowel, I can anticipate, okay, when I'm saying the letter N, people might hear ain or in, and they have trouble hearing that I'm saying letter N with these sounds. So examining which sounds are in which letters, particularly for things that you have to spell, your name, your email address, your street address, can be very useful. And so that's one element that your accent pattern you want to consider. Here's another example. So for example, if my last name were maybe Rodriguez, I'm going to want to actually write out R. I have the ah and the sounds. O. I want to make sure I have a long American O. D. R. And then I can be tricky because if I'm a Spanish speaker, my name is Rodriguez, and I think of the I as being an E. I will have to, if I write I, or I, depending on what's useful for you. If you're familiar with the phonetic alphabet, you can use that. Or just a way of writing it so that you're noticing and remembering I instead of E. G, People also, I think, tend to have difficulty with G and J, because G, really, we say it like this, G, versus letter J, we say it like J, and this is letter G. So those two can easily get confused. U, I may want to say that more as an oo or another pronunciation. So if I write the word you, I'll say it the way Americans do. Then E, I often will write that with two E's, so I don't confuse it with my I. And then Z. So I can examine for all of these words, where do I have issues? Do I have difficulty with R? Is that going to sound more like I'm saying ah, ah? Do I have to work on tightening my R, R? Or D, G, etc. Z sound, if I'm a Spanish speaker, it might sound more like C, because I'm not saying a voiced Z sound. And then that sounds like letter C. So I'm looking ahead, anticipating where the issues can be with my accent and taking into account pronunciation differences that happen in my native language. It looks like a lot to say, and that's another thing that we forget when I'm spelling something out. I need to have pauses between my letters. I need to be clear on what the letters are and help people understand and confirm that they got the correct information. Of course, these are skills that American speakers need as well. If they're giving information over the phone, it's helpful to have the person read the name back to you, read the spelling back to you, and listen to make sure that they didn't make an error, particularly if you're giving your email address and they get it wrong, then they don't have a way to contact you after that. Speaking of which, there are many sounds when we say them over the phone that are difficult to distinguish from one another. For example, when I'm saying letters like T versus D, the only difference there is that this one is voiced and this one is voiceless, T and D, or M and N. Those sounds are M and N. It's extremely difficult to hear which one someone is saying over the phone. So as a native speaker, when I'm spelling my name over the phone, I say N as in Nancy. I'm sure you've heard this. M as in Mary, N as in Nancy. When I say that, then the person on the other end can hear Mary, they know that's an M, or they can hear Nancy, they know that's an N. I've gone through all of the alphabet and given you suggestions and tips for which letters sound the same and which words you can use when you're describing to tell them what letter you're using. You can use any word. I could say M as in Molly, M as in Michael, M as in masterpiece. But if we're already potentially having communication difficulties over the phone, if I use something that's more typical and standard that Americans use, then that can be really helpful. I do have people who sometimes will use A as in alpha, B as in Bravo, which is the military code. But I would say that's less commonly used than using names or like, for example, for D and B. Those are very similar, B and D, hard to hear the difference. So you'll hear B as in boy and D as in dog, which are different, quite different from each other and more easily heard and understood than just letter names. People in general get more information when you say a full word. When I say boy, even if I'm not pronouncing it exactly correctly or it's difficult to hear over the phone, they can usually make out a word more easily than just a letter sound. At any rate, I have a video and a lesson to help you with this that goes through the entire alphabet, how to pronounce the entire alphabet, and a new way of writing the letters to help you remember to say them correctly, what the IPA symbols are for those letters, and what sounds you can use for spelling over the phone. So I'll give you the link to that. That's on speechmodification.com. And also I have a video about spelling over the phone that you can find here on my YouTube channel, Speech Modification Seattle. So here's the link for the lesson for spelling letters. And thinking ahead about what information you have to give. So email address, particularly if you have an unusual email address that's not words where someone would understand it, or if they already don't know your name and your email address contains your name, then you want to be practicing and making sure that you know, can anticipate potential errors, and you know which letters you have to say, B as in boy, or R as in rabbit, for, etc. I also have quite a few tips for spelling over the phone, and you can find those in this lesson. I'll put that in the chat for you as well. I'm happy to take your questions regarding this topic or other questions you might have regarding pronouncing words, other questions. It doesn't have to be related to this topic. But I wanted to bring this up because it's true for not just non-native speakers, but also us native speakers. We do have to take care when we're giving this information and knowing how to be clear. Great. So a few other patterns to watch out for. Let's look at some other examples. So we talked about B and D, M and N, T and D. You also might want to watch out for F versus S. You can hear how, if you can't see my mouth, F and S sound very similar. They both also start with this vowel, and then they have a different sibilant sound at the end. But over the phone, what we're really hearing is that noise, that F or S. The noise is very similar, and so it's very hard to hear the difference there. So you might say F as in Frank and S as in Sam when you're spelling those letters. And again, paying attention to most letters have an like N, F, M, or an E, like B, D, C, G, etc. We also have V, which we mentioned before, is particularly difficult because it sounds similar to these other letters with the E sound. And also perhaps I have an issue with V versus W, where I might say it more like we, or V versus B. And so if I say V as in Victor versus B as in boy, then it doesn't matter so much if my V and B are clear from one another, then I can hear those differences. Now, if I have difficulty saying one of these words, I might want to make sure that I'm using something either that's typical, like saying Victor and boy, or something that's very clear where I have a very good pronunciation of that letter sound. It's not going to be helpful if I'm trying to use a word to clarify what letter, if I'm not pronouncing that word correctly or understandably. So that can be something to keep in mind as well. And yes, okay, so that's what I wanted to cover and talk about in terms of spelling, giving your name over the phone, paying attention to letter sounds. I do also have on that link I gave you for my website, I'll show you a download that you can print out for you to help you with practicing and help you with planning. So there are the accent overview downloads, and also on my free practice site, where you'll see many of the lessons I refer to. You can go to the online practice free trial, and here's the lesson about pronouncing the alphabet in English. So it shows you the YouTube video where I go through each of the letters and tell you. It gives you practice tips, like I'm talking about today, and a link to the full alphabet, a downloadable document that has, as I said, the letters, the IPA, the symbols, and a way of spelling the letter sound to help you pronounce it correctly. You can also use the search tools here on speechmodification.com to look up any questions you might have, any letters, sounds, pronunciations you're looking for, and all of the lessons related to that will come up. So if I looked at, for example, I'm interested in spelling and learning about vowel sounds and spelling, a topic we've been talking about a lot lately. I can see the free downloads for vowel sounds and spelling. I can look for rules for spelling vowels and specific sounds and letters that I can look up. Parts of the accent challenges, the spelling challenges for pronunciation, pronouncing the alphabet, and additional information to help you. So I hope you'll take advantage of these free resources. If you are here in the Bellevue area, I hope you'll be able to join me on Wednesday for the free class with Ella at Crossroads Community Center. That's at 10 a.m. on Wednesday. And you can find more information about that on speechmodification.com. Also, check out my playlists on the channel page. You can look up, you can follow through lessons to help you organize the 5x5 challenge, and the 30-day challenge will walk you through steps of training, as well as looking at particular sounds that might be challenging for you. So my American R playlist, vowels, TH, all of those are available on Speech Modification Seattle. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, I recommend doing that, because then you'll see when I upload new videos and you'll be able to get notifications for when I go live, if that's of interest to you. And again, if you have any questions or comments looking for particular resources, if you can't find them easily here on the channel page or on my website, feel free to contact me, leave a comment, and I'll let you know where those are, direct you to the resources, or maybe even make a new video just for you to help explain your question or your comment. Hi, nice to see you, Javier. So thank you so much for being a part of class today, and I appreciate all of the comments and questions that you give in these classes and also on my videos, and I look forward to seeing you again next Friday, where we'll talk about another topic for American accent training. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, if you want to sound American, you can do it. speechmodification.com.